Hello and welcome. Again, thank you for joining me. So my name is Hannah Alday. I am a nutrition educator and part of the local foods team at Cornell Cooperative Extension of Jefferson County. And I just want to say, please feel free if you'd like to unmute yourself. We will be recording, so if you don't mind your voice being in the recording, you are welcome to talk out loud, or please feel free to drop things in the chat as you all have been doing. So today we will be talking about getting the word out and how to reach potential customers. So I'm sure many of you didn't go into farming because you love marketing, but for better or worse, it is a crucial tool for maintaining viability and bringing in growth. So excuse me, I'm going to let someone else in. So today we're going to be covering the basics of creating a marketing plan and the various marketing tools that you can use to help achieve your goals. So I'm going to be sharing some cost estimates and regulations for some of these marketing tools. So these are based on data for Jefferson County, New York. So for our friends who are joining us from other regions, or if you are watching this at a later date, you may need to contact the marketing specialist in your region at the cooperative extension, or talk directly to the service providers, because some of this information is subject to change. But I hope it will at least give you a general sense of what tools are out there and what could be available to you. So again, I will be covering them very quickly so we can try to keep our time together to about an hour because I do have a lot to cover tonight. But please feel free to keep putting questions in the chat. I will also try to leave some time at the end of the workshop to answer them. If I don't get to all of the questions in the chat tonight, I will save it and I will answer them in a Word document that I will send out to all attendees so you can make sure you have those answers. So I apologize in advance if I don't get to them tonight. So I'd just like to start our conversation on marketing by centering an analysis by our colleague John Eckert at the University of Missouri. So John says, the new farm marketing strategies are not about advertising, promoting, or selling. They are about finding people who already want to buy what farmers produce, not only because it is fresher and tastes better, but because of how it is produced and who produces it. The new consumers are willing to pay a fair price for food produced with ecological social integrity. Marketing strategies for new farmers are not just about exploiting impersonal markets, but instead they are about sustaining personal relationships. So let's start talking about how you can find the people who want to buy what you produce and who shares the value of local food with customers who might not realize what they are looking for. So we start by creating a marketing plan. So I know this might just seem like an extra step, and we are all just really excited to start putting some new marketing tools to use. But creating a marketing plan can save you time and money in the long term. So it is an important step. So forgive my farming analogy here, but you wouldn't just scatter seeds at any old time of the year. Likewise, it's important to plan your marketing strategy and determine which tools will fit your market, rather than just having a bunch of different seeds, different varieties, scattering them, hoping something will grow and come of it. We want to be strategic about this. So the first step that is always considered best practice before launching any new marketing campaign, approaching a new market, or drastically expanding your business is to determine your customer base. So this is going to help you target your marketing materials and how you deliver your story so that you aren't wasting your time, your money, or your energy reaching potential customers who just aren't interested. Remember, we want to find those who are interested in our story and who have our values. So for example, to determine your customer base, I want you to think about who is currently purchasing from you. And I know this might be hard if you're not selling direct to consumers, but you might have some sort of idea. So you might ask yourself, are they families? Are they young adults, individuals? If you run a farm stand, is it consistently sold out, but maybe your CSA is having a hard time maintaining customers, or vice versa? Is there a particular product that everyone comes to you to buy, and then once they see everything else available, they end up purchasing more? These are some of the questions that you can ask yourself when you are working to determine your customer base. And just a note, your customer base might be different depending on your product. So if you have different categories of product like produce and value-added products or meat and fleece, you may want to keep a note or just keep it in the back of your mind who your different customers are, and then use that to inform what message you send to different audiences. So I know this sounds a little bit abstract, but once we start talking about marketing mediums and specific examples, it should hopefully become clearer. And if it doesn't, please feel free to bring it up. So then our second step in creating a marketing plan is identifying what makes your farm or your operation unique. So storytelling is quickly becoming a popular marketing technique, and for very good reason. The market research shows that a majority of customers feel strongly about keeping their food dollars in their community. However, there can be challenges for customers when purchasing. And I'm sure we are all familiar with a lot of them, and we'll be talking about the tools that will help overcome those barriers. But in general, sharing your story can help create that emotional connection with your customers that can drive them to, overcome those barriers a little bit more and to seek out your products and to help you build that loyal customer base. So after this workshop, probably tomorrow, I will be sending out some resources to you all. It will have some worksheets included with you that will help you think about how to start telling your story. But a good place to start is just thinking about maybe why you farm, why you do what you do, or even just what do you get a lot of questions about? When you're out in the public working with community members, what are people most curious about? So those are some good places to start when thinking about what makes your farm unique. So our third, today we will be diving into the pros and cons of many marketing mediums that are available, what tools you can use. And what tools or mediums you choose will largely depend on your customer base and how you want to reach them. So we will talk about which mediums work best for which markets and other considerations, but just remembering it's who you want to reach and what are your goals are going to be kind of the center of deciding what tools to use. So then once you decide on a medium or two or three or four, it's time to create a schedule. So a lot of folks find success by starting marketing before the season starts. So sometimes January, February timeframe, ramping it up at the start of the season. And then as the season goes on, kind of tapering or bringing back their marketing efforts. So there's a couple ways to do this. You might use multiple marketing mediums kind of at the beginning and the middle of your season and taper off, or you could just be increasing the amount you are using one medium. And it's also going to be highly dependent on what your season looks like and kind of what alternative events you might have going on. So this is what that could look like. I'm a very visual learner, so this works for me, but you might choose to just have a simple checklist or add due dates into your calendar. So you can see on here, there are some activities that happen once before the season has begun. So your entry into the local foods guide, which we'll be talking about, kind of writing a press release is happening towards the beginning there. But then there's going to be some activities that continue throughout the season. So putting up on-farm signage, daily Facebook posts, selling at the weekly farmers market. And these are all the tools that we're going to be jumping into. And then our fifth step is going to be actually carrying out our plan. So creating a plan is going to set us up for success. So we will easily be able to carry it out and not just throw darts at the board and hope something sticks. So similar, you can think of it in comparison with a crop plan. This helps us get things in the ground when we need to and not miss out on valuable opportunities. And then our last step is evaluate and adjust, or AKA, was it worth it? Because for a lot of these marketing tools that we'll be talking about, they will require at least some time. Some of them will require some money, and they are going to require some energy because it is time and energy that you're putting into marketing your farm. So this evaluate and adjust will help us determine if it's worth it. So this doesn't just have to happen at the end of the season. There are certain forms of marketing like social media that we can get constant feedback from so we can kind of get real-time data whether or not we need to adapt our strategy and focus on other marketing techniques. And again, as we talk through this, I think it will become a little more clear if it's not already. So there are a few ways that you can measure whether or not it's worth it, depending on, again, the tools you're using and your goals. But the idea is to build your plan, the plan for evaluation, into your marketing plan. So right when you first put together your marketing plan, we want to have an idea of how we are going to tell if it's worth it. This is going to save you from wasting valuable time, valuable energy, and money trying to figure out what strategy works and trying to come up with an evaluation on the fly. So determining your return on investment can be most easily determined when you have a baseline. So this would be what your purchases or your customer visits or your sales numbers look like before you implement a new marketing strategy or tool. So it gives us something to compare it to. So this might look like the number of sales at your farmer's market stall. It might look like the number of Facebook followers. It might look like the dollar amount of purchases at your farm stand. There are going to be a lot of different metrics that you can use. And again, it's going to depend on how you are selling and what is your goal at the end of this marketing, what you want to look at. So as we talk through marketing tools, I will give some examples of how you can do this evaluation and determine this return on investment. But in general, if you are trying multiple new marketing campaigns all at once, so maybe you're doing a social media campaign, maybe you're doing flyers, and maybe you're doing some in-person marketing events. And again, we'll be talking about these. But if you're trying these new ones at once, you will be able to determine your overall return on investment, but you won't necessarily be able to tell which tool the marketing, the effects are coming from. So if you see an increase in your profit, but you're running 3 different campaigns, you won't necessarily be able to tell which campaign is actually driving that increase in profit. So just something to keep in mind when we're thinking about evaluation. But to calculate your overall return on investment, you're going to need your sales growth. So that means your profit either either during or after your marketing campaign. Then from that, you want to subtract the amount you spent on marketing across all of the mediums you used. This number is then divided by the marketing cost and multiplied by 100 to get the percent growth that is due to your marketing efforts. So an easy way to think about this, a positive ROI or return on investment means the return is greater than the costs, and a negative return on investment means the cost was greater than what you got out of it. So obviously we want to be striving for a positive, and if we get a negative, it means maybe our techniques will need to be adjusted a little bit. And I just want to note, you can use this formula if you are just trying one marketing technique at a time as well, and you'll be able to see kind of that direct effect. So once you have this information, it can help you decide if you want to increase the marketing with tools that you've determined are successful, if you want to stop spending on media or tools that aren't paying off, you maybe have a negative ROI from it, or if you just want to continue as you're going. All right, and then just one note, using this equation to determine your return on investment will be most accurate if you can use the sales growth from the same year or even the same season. So this will help control for events that had nothing to do with your marketing, like a closure of a grocery store that maybe drove more people to your location, or something like a global pandemic, which has turned our food system topsy-turvy and has had some unpredicted effects. So if you can measure it in the same season, you can really see more of that direct effect of your marketing. So just to reiterate, planning for how you evaluate the success of your marketing campaign should be done before any of your marketing starts. This is going to help you avoid spending unnecessary time, energy, and money and spending it inefficiently. And then one last time, as we move through the marketing process, remember who your target audience is and what are your goals with marketing. right? We want to have a reason that we're putting in this effort. And you're going to hear me say that so many times by the end of this workshop, just so we keep remembering. All right, so now we get into the nitty-gritty of the different marketing tools that we have available. This isn't going to be an exhaustive list. There are a lot of new options coming up all the time, but there are a fair amount of them. So I will be moving through them fairly quickly. This is going to be more of an overview. But if you do have specific questions on any of the tools, again, feel free to drop in the chat. You will have my contact information, so you can email me directly. There's lots of ways to reach out. So we're going to start with the type of marketing that is going to require more energy in the form of a time commitment. So this is called active marketing. This is the type of marketing that requires you or someone who works on your farms. It requires your active engagement. And so as such, they require more time investment. However, the payoffs can be fairly significant. So while we initially think of farmers markets solely as a space to sell our product, they can also serve as a great way to get some marketing built into an activity that you might already be doing. So for example, consider the individual who stops by the market for the first time. Maybe they were driving past, they're not usually in the area, but they stopped by to make a purchase. When you are at your stall and you are advertising your on-farm stand or other locations where you sell, this could gain you another customer who wasn't aware of all these services that you could offer. So your method of marketing at the farmer's market can be as simple or complex as you'd like. Maybe just someone dropping by and you letting them know, oh, come find us at this market next week. It could be a flyer with your Facebook or web page and contact information, but you could also enhance something like that with your market schedule. And even if you don't attend farmers markets, if you are hosting a special event like an open house or a U-Pick, you might ask the market manager or a farming friend to take a couple of those flyers for you to pass out. So as I mentioned before, I'm a nutrition educator, so I work mostly in the nutrition department, and we see that one of the significant barriers to customers interested in purchasing local foods is the confusion over what to do with the produce, even what you or I might think of as common. So you might be surprised how many families are unsure how to prepare Brussels sprouts, or what a beet looks like, or the fact that you can sneak zucchini into everything. So if you have a favorite recipe for fresh corn salad, tomato goulash, something that you make a lot with the products you are selling, share it with them. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. Even just typed up with your farm contact information can be a great way to demonstrate value to your customer. And then if they love the recipe and want to make it again, they'll be coming back and stocking up on more of your product. Another technique that I heard from a farmer, and I think this one's so clever, they use this to build their mailing list and bring customers back to their farmer's market stall. So if a customer at the market asked when a certain crop would be ready, the farmer would have them fill out a postcard with their name, address, and the produce they were interested in. So self-addressed with whatever they were interested in. Then when the crop was ready and was going to be at the market, the farmer would mail that postcard alerting their customer that it was in season. So the farmer also collected the addresses into a database that they used for other mailing purposes, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. But if you decide to go that route, I just want to say, make sure you have a disclaimer at your stand, letting folks that their mailing addresses will be used to send other communications from your farm, but never sold. And then obviously don't sell that information. And I just want to note that the postcard that this farmer used, it was nothing special. It was just, one of the big packs that you could get. So those were fairly inexpensive. I think you can find them for under $10 for a pack of 20 or so. And then the cost of the postage stamp was the cost that would go into this marketing technique. But if you try this technique and you find it successful, there are lots of ways that you can personalize this a little bit more. So designing your own postcard that has pictures of your farm or other marketing materials on it can be a great way that someone can keep a momentum of you in sight. And we all know in sight is in mind. And again, to determine if this technique is worth its cost, you could keep track of the postcards you send out versus how many of those customers come back in. So maybe asking customers to bring that postcard with them, or even just asking if they used it. A lot of times, if you have that interaction with someone, you might remember them a little bit more, or they might specifically say, I got your postcard, I'm so excited to come back for that. And then compare the cost of supplies to the increased purchases would give you a little bit of a sense of whether or not this is worth your money. Right? And then marketing can also be as simple as making what you are currently doing more attractive to customers. So here are a couple ideas of aesthetic changes that you can make to make your stall or your stand pop, but there are a lot of spaces for creativity in this. So the simplest way to measure the success of your efforts at a farmer's market is going to be that return on investment equation that we just talked about. And as with all these forms of active marketing, you will also want to take into account the time you are spending. So this is going to be going into that marketing cost side of the equation, because we want to compare time spent at the farmer's market versus time we could be spending doing something else. Whether that's something you are doing to make a profit, or even just something like family time or doing something for your own mental health. So I just want to acknowledge that the time you are sitting at the stall is also going to have an effect on your return on investment. And again, it's not one size fits all. So you're going to need to figure out what's works best in your business and what you want to focus on. It might change season to season. You might have a colorful tablecloth at one season and you realize it got so messy, you were having to do laundry all the time. We're going to go into another route. And I just want to mention real quick where it talks about the recommendation for choosing a table size that allows your products to look bountiful. So if you do have an option to choose your own table, this means choosing one a little bit smaller so you can have these beautiful piles of carrots. You can maybe have a nice display of your honey where it looks really bountiful and like customers are interested in purchasing more of it and not, there's kind of sometimes a subconscious trait that we don't want to take the last of anything. And so making sure your customers know there's a lot here for you to purchase. If you do not have a choice in your table size, maybe they come standard and they're a little bit larger than what you need, you can always group all of your product on one half. The other half you can use to put out flyers or anything to do with your farm. I've also been very interested in seeing some farmers have just a simple poster board or one of those, the easels that self-stand, where they type up their story. So again, that storytelling on there and putting pictures of their farm on there. So I've been seeing that a little more frequently. And so that's one way that you can adapt the size of your table. Great, so the next tool we're going to talk about are community partnerships. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with CSAs, or community supported agriculture. So just basically this is where, just so I make sure I'm using the same definition that you all are using, when I talk about CSA, I'm talking about where customers purchase a share in a farmer's harvest, either by paying a set amount upfront or weekly, or paying for the items that they add to their basket each week. So just knowing that this business model isn't a perfect fit for everyone, if you are interested in it and seeing if it's going to work more, please feel free to reach out and contact us. But it might not work for you, and maybe you have neighbors or other farmers who do run a CSA. You could ask them if they need additional products to offer that you can supply, ideally including a recipe or a flyer with it, advertising your location services. I just want to note, this kind of works the best if you are offering complementary products, not the same ones, but ones that go well together. So thinking about, you offer stone fruit and your neighbor offers vegetables, or you have meat and eggs and your neighbor has produce, things like that. Because you will be able to sell your product and have an increased awareness of your farm, and then your neighbor will benefit by bringing in more customers who are interested in using them as a one-stop shop where they can purchase multiple grocery and food group items. And for community organizations, it can be really important to create and maintain good relationships. It can help you spread the word within that organization and to others that they have contact with. So for example, some restaurants and cafes have community notice boards where you can leave flyers and sales information on, especially if it's something that you update at least seasonally or when new harvest ingredients come in. The people who run those restaurants and cafes will be able to see that there is some change and there is some dedication to cultivating this relationship. So it could lead to, restaurants or cafes adding or featuring some of your goods to their products, or even, shops and things like that. A lot of the local stores can sometimes feature different products. So other community organizations have spaces for flyers or opportunities to have events added to especially their virtual calendars. Some organizations that really come to mind would be your local chambers of commerce. And we'll be talking a little bit more about how you can involve your chambers of commerce. All right, so now let's talk about agritourism. So agritourism is increasing in popularity and the revenue generated. So a lot of very exciting possibilities here. The activities in agritourism are generally recreational or educational activities that take place on the farm and generate some supplemental income for the farmer. So one example that many are familiar with is the U-Pick operations, but other examples include harvest festivals, farm tours, petting the zoo, school tours, picnicking. So what attracts someone to your farm to drive out there might be different than what drives someone to the farmer's market. So hosting events on your farms could be a great way to reach a larger customer base if you're trying to grow your customer base. And it can also help build loyalty with your current customers. Again, seeing your product, hearing your story, and building that emotional connection. So there are a few considerations if there's something you're interested in. If you decide you might want to incorporate some agritourism, you might consider starting with something relatively low risk and lower commitment, because I'm sure you can imagine it can become very involved. Some examples might be weekly or monthly farm tours or opening unused land as a picnic site for families to come on. Just be sure to have liability waivers and appropriate insurance for each visitor. It's not worth the risk of someone getting hurt or something happening even to your equipment. And then as you get more comfortable with agritourism and maybe you start seeing profits, you might consider adding additional events like a festival or a petting zoo. Some folks have even been very successful adding a bed and breakfast operation. Just remember that as you grow, it's going to require more investment of your time and money. So if you're interested in learning more about agritourism or talking through what it could look like for your business, again, feel free to reach out to us. So one way to dip your toe into agritourism that I mentioned is to host an open house. So open houses on farms have long been held. There's a quote from the 1890s that they've been held to help acquaint non-farmers with the importance of crop, dairy, and meat farming. And so open houses or farms, as it were, have the potential to introduce customers to an important sector of the economy, to help you reach a broader customer base, to increase on-farm sales, and to expand the knowledge of a new generation. So an open farm is a fantastic way to share your story again, and to share your passion with community members. And just note, these generally work best for farms that have few biosecurity concerns like fruits or vegetables, maple or dairy. But if you work in another industry and you're interested, there are some ways to work around. But just know, whichever route you choose, it will require some planning and forethought. So a few considerations that you might think of are, why are you planning to have this open farm day? What is your goal from it? So before starting to plan it, you might consider what that goal is. Are you trying to draw more customers in to purchase at your farm? Are you trying to share the importance of farming with your community? Are you looking to educate people about your farm? What part of your farm do you want to highlight? An open farm day can fulfill all of these goals, but it is helpful to pick one as your focus as you design your experience, as you design the experience you want your customers to have. So then once you have that main focus, as you are going about your day on the farm, you might think about what experiences you might want to include. So do you want people to learn about the water cycle on a farm? Do you want to talk to people about raising chickens and then they can purchase eggs from you? Do you want people to feel free to wander your farm, or do you want them to visit specific stations? Let me grab a drink real quick. So as you think about what you would like your open farm day to look like, you can start thinking about how the logistics would work. Do you have places for people to park? Especially during COVID, do you have space for people to keep lots of space from each other? Do you have someone who has the time and the knowledge and very importantly, the patience to lead the tours? Do you have the energy for that? Will you have bathrooms available? Will you be passing out food samples and need a permit? As we all know, farms can be dangerous, especially for members of the general public who may not have seen a combine or aren't prepared for muddy conditions. But it's not only dangerous for members of the public visiting your farm, but also your products and your livelihood. So will you be able to keep your animals safe? Are you going to be able to block off the fields so sprouts don't get trampled? Because really making sure that that safety and there are clear barriers, even if we think that they might not be necessary, will be important. Because signage will help with this. So using marking ribbon, handwritten signs, making sure the public knows which areas are off limits. And so I would suggest putting signs that say authorized personnel only anywhere you don't want the public going, even if you think it's somewhere obvious like your house. Because if it's a visitor's first time to a farm, they might not be able to tell the difference between farm buildings and personal quarters. So really think about whether you have the time and the energy to have community members visit your farm. So will you be comfortable answering some of the questions they may ask, like, where does chocolate milk come from? That's a true story, true questions I've been asked. Or questions like, how much space do animals have to roam? Or how do you know when to harvest a specific crop? So personally, I've conducted farm tours at open farm days before, and I've seen the most basic questions that we might think of are asked over and over. So in addition to answering questions with respect, it's also recommended to share why. So for example, one of our colleagues at CCE Madison, they host a farm day, and she recommends that, for example, if your poultry do not have access to the outdoors, be prepared to answer why. People visit open farm day to gain more information about farming and the way their food is raised, and they want reassurance that this is done in a sustainable and safe way. So I'm sure many of us have seen the headlines that make everything seem scary. The general public doesn't always have the background and the level of information about farming to be able to understand the nuances or understand the dangers of those headlines. So you can be a very valuable resource in helping to explain some of those nuances to the general public. So just being aware that this is something that you might take on should you choose to go the open farm route. And if you are planning on sampling foods or inviting community members around processing areas, you will need to consider food safety and any appropriate precautions you may need to take. And lastly, you might think about alternative forms of entertainment. We're going to talk a bit about this in a little bit, but this could look like live music, inviting your vet to talk about animal care, or your local extension educators to run an educational program. But we'll go ahead and dive into those a little bit more. But first, I wanted to mention farm tours as a way to dip your toe into the world of open farms. So open farms dip our toes into agritourism. Farm tours are going to dip our toe into open farms. So guided farm tours offer more control because you can limit the number of guests who are on a tour, and also someone from your farm will be with everyone at all points. So if you're a little bit worried about some of the logistics of having folks wandering, a farm tour can be a great place to start. Again, there's little to no cost. It's going to mostly just be your time there. Again, you are going to want to highlight or decide what you will highlight. So maybe you are going to take your guests through a day in the life of the farm, or you are going to introduce a specific aspect of the farm, maybe what makes your farm unique. But generally these last about 30 to 45 minutes, but you might consider how convenient it is for guests to visit your farm. Are you very far away from a lot of folks? Are you very close by? And add activities, things that will take up time if it's a farther distance for people, just so they feel like it's a little bit worth that investment of coming out. So you can offer or schedule these upon request if folks ask you for it, or you can have a fixed date and time every month where if people show up, you run the tour, and if not, you get to go do something else. So the great thing about the farm tours is they do require a smaller investment of time, energy, and of course money. So while some farms charge a few dollars or supply a tip jar for tours, others rely on the profits from increased on-farm sales to make it profitable. So the tour does offer you an important opportunity to talk up those farm fresh eggs that you collected just that morning, or talk about those sun-warmed tomatoes that are picked at their peak ripeness. Allowing guests to visualize where their food is coming from and how their purchase supports your farm is a very valuable marketing strategy. So having those products available post-tour can be helpful. So for those entertainment events, if you want to add some additional draw to either your farm tour or open farm day or even some sort of festival, you might add a simple family-friendly activity that's going to draw a broader customer base and enhance the positive experiences on your farm. So the next time the family sees you at the farmer's market or they drive past your farm stand, they'll be more likely to stop because they remember that connection. So just a few ideas: a kid-friendly scavenger hunt to keep kids entertained. This is something that you can find pre-made or put together yourself. You know, simple, find the barn cat. Find something with 6 wheels. This prize can be very simple, maybe a few strawberries if you're growing them, some stickers, very easy things, and kids will be very happy. And then holding events around holidays like pumpkin decorating, trick or treat, egg hunting. And if you have animals, you could offer a naming contest and invite classes or Facebook followers and visitors to contribute names. Then advertise your favorites and either have people vote or you pick yourself. Then you might invite everyone out to your farm for a naming ceremony or just use it to create a lot of content if you're on social media. I just want to note you may want to avoid this strategy or be a little more strategic about it if your animals are destined for the slaughterhouse. So let's go ahead and move on to passive marketing. I want to keep us on time and lots to talk about. So this is on the other side of our spectrum. It's something that usually requires just a one-time investment, especially like per season. You can think of it as a set it and forget it, usually until the next year. So first, I have to mention our local food guide. So I recognize some of the names in our session tonight who have participated in the past. So it's a print and digital publication put out by CCE Jefferson. It's a free source of marketing for Jefferson County and has a wide circulation. So last year was just our first year with a digital webpage, and we had over 700 visits. So as it becomes more well-known, we're really anticipating that number to increase. So if you haven't signed up yet, it's not too late. You can sign up online. I will send out the link also with all the resources. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us. And for our friends who aren't located within Jefferson County, recommend contacting your local extension office. Most counties do have a similar program either through their extension or through another community organization. So a strong online presence can be critical to boosting business and increasing marketing, especially if you sell directly to customers through a farm stand or CSA, where the goal is to allow the customer to see your product and decide if it's worth the effort. Websites can also project professionality, and this is important if you are trying to sell to restaurants, schools, or offer some forms of agritourism. So at a minimum, your website should have the name, location, and hours, and what you are trying to sell, whether it's the instructions for participating in your CSA or a list of where and how customers can purchase your product. However, as we mentioned before, more and more customers are interested in the story behind a farmer and the products they are potentially buying. So one place to start if you want to spruce up your webpage a little bit is to start with a simple question and answer section on your webpage with answers to questions such as, how long have you been farming? How did you get into farming? Simple questions like that, and pictures, lots and lots of pictures. And if you would like support in this, again, please feel free to contact us. So maybe you already have a web page that you just need to spruce up, or maybe you are starting from scratch. There are a lot of different options, from hiring a website developer to custom build your web page, which can range in the thousands of dollars per year, to website builders that allow you to use a template, to WordPress, which is free to use, but requires you to do all the design work on your end. So here's a price comparison of some of the most popular website builders. This is not an extensive list, but these are some of the more popular ones. Remember, you will also need to include the cost of the domain or your URL, and this is usually about $10 to $20 per year, depending on that domain. So one important consideration when determining how you are going to build your website is how user-friendly it is, because a website won't do you any good if it's out of date and difficult for customers to use. So consider how easily you can update and make changes to the platform. So you might consider trying to use a free trial, or talking to a website developer if you're using one and asking them if you would need to pay them for every change or if you could do it yourself. So since you won't be checking your website every day, it can easily be forgotten. So one suggestion to make sure that it is up to date and easy for customers to access is to have a standing day, say the second Saturday of every month, that you will check out your web page and make any changes or updates that need to be added. So now that I've talked to you about how important websites are to building online support, I'm going to talk to you about how increasingly social media profiles, especially Facebook, are seen as more important. So our colleagues at the Penn State Extension give this example of parents waking up in the morning and trying to decide what to do that day with their kids. They see a post with your farm as they're scrolling through Facebook and decide to visit your market location or decide to visit your U-Pick. Families aren't always Googling what to do all the time, but when they're scrolling through Facebook, if they're a follower, it's going to pop up for them. So as far as determining your return on investment, the price of a follower is a little more difficult to assign that dollar amount to. But a recent report showed that a Facebook follower is more likely to spend more, continue shopping with you, and help you gain more followers. So you might think about using social media in conjunction with another marketing tool like discounts, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, to get an idea of how effective it is for your purchases. So Facebook is free to create a profile and offers a variety of marketing tools such as boosted posts that will increase the audience of your post for as little as a few dollars. So I tapped into our communications and marketing director at CCE to talk to us about a few tips for marketing on social media. So for engaging posts, the recommendations are to use a picture. It could be of your fields, your animals, your farm sign, the meal you made with your products. Removing the links from your post. So the link will still be available as the photo for folks to click on, but you won't have that long URL, so Facebook won't filter it out. And you will be getting a handout of this slide with detailed information on each of these. Working to build engagement with your Facebook followers, so asking them questions, responding to their questions, liking comments, and then trying to post every day or as frequently as you can, up to a day. Oops, wrong direction. Nope, Wrong direction again. All right, and lastly, but of course not least, you could have the most engaging page ever, but if no one is following you, it's not going to help build your customer base. So make sure every customer you interact with knows how they can follow you on Facebook, inviting farm visitors and farmers market customers, and letting them know how it will help them. So for example, if you have a customer who asks when strawberries will be ready, you can tell them, follow us on Facebook for an update. And anything you pass out, flyers or recipes, should have your website and social media profiles with a simple invitation to follow us. So when you if you decide to add additional marketing accounts, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, it's important to maintain consistency across all accounts. So this means the same opening hours on each platform, the same information on special events, and the same advice that was given for maintaining your website is again given here. Keep a running list of all the marketing platforms and social media accounts you are using. Ideally, stick it to your marketing plan so they're together. Then on a certain day of the week, go through and make sure any updates that need to be made are made and the information matches. So some ideas for managing multiple accounts. Facebook has a built-in scheduler that you can use to create posts in advance. So this could be something you build into the check-in day. For other forms of social media, Hootsuite has paid and free versions. The free version is usually good enough. So scheduling in advance can help you maintain that posting consistency, even if you have a week that's going to be really busy with markets. This is important, especially if you are the one managing your social media accounts, being able to schedule things out even several months in advance. If you are managing multiple social media accounts on different platforms, it's key to know who uses each platform and tailor your content to them. So your audience on Instagram is not likely the same as your audience on Twitter. Instagram users are looking for engaging pictures and videos, whereas Twitter users look for short but informative written posts. So it's not a good idea to post exactly the same thing on all of your platforms. You can simply adapt it by adding or removing photos based on the platform. So here you can see some examples of what this might look like. Instagram, very picture-based. Again, Twitter, it's just one sentence talking about this workshop. And on Facebook, pictures, a little bit of a paragraph, and you can see that URL is removed from the text, but the link to Uncommon Fruit still remains. And just like the importance of knowing your goal before implementing a marketing tool, when deciding whether or not to create a new social media account on a new platform, have a plan. Make sure you know what you want to use it for, and you are going to have the energy to maintain it. And lastly, remember our social media strength comes from our ability to connect with our audience. So attempt to be engaging on all platforms. If someone messages you, comments on a post, or responds to a tweet, engage with them and respond back. And notifications can be really helpful, letting you know if someone's engaging with you. So there are lots of ways to be creative and use social media, but I hope this brief overview helps give you some ideas to think about and how you can be creative in making it work in your marketing plan and for your business. So geotargeting is another method of passive marketing. It's a method of tailoring or targeting online advertising to a specific demographic or geographic location. So for example, you might choose to have your ad or business listed to become the first search result for people who are within 5 miles of your farm stand or another constant location where you sell your product. So this method of advertising works well if you have a strong online presence that you can direct people to through this ad campaign, or if you are having a specific event that you want to direct folks to. There is a standard formatting within each of these geo-targeting ad platforms, mostly Google and Facebook, but you are responsible for any photography or wording that you want to include. So depending on the platform, you can target users based on their geographic location, their listed age, gender, and interests. And then you would choose these targets by knowing your customer base and who you are trying to reach. These tools are very budget friendly because you can set a certain amount that you want to spend, which usually the minimum is $5. So if you wanted to experiment, you could put relatively little cash down, and then it only advertises up to that budget amount. And usually it's shared and is boosted to other folks until it reaches the cost you set. And then you only pay for when it actually gets put in front of people. So if no one ends up seeing it, that's not counted towards your budget. So there are a few, as I mentioned, there are a few different mediums for geotargeting. Most social media sites have this capability, but I'm just going to talk about Google and Facebook real quick. So here's an example. When you've searched for something on Google, if you choose to boost it, it would come up like this at the top. There would be the ad there, and then your results. And then here's an example of how it looks on Facebook. Facebook, you can target your audience a little more specifically based on the interests and the age and the gender that someone lists on their profile. So Google, you don't always have that capability. But again, my slide's a little bit shifted, but it does come up as a sponsored post. And both these platforms offer detailed analytics, so you can check on the performance of different versions. Say one you use a picture of a cow and the next you use a picture of a field. You can look how well each is performing and choose to focus exclusively on the one that is performing well. All right, and I'm just going to give everyone a heads up. I'm not going to finish in the hour. I know I have about 6 minutes left. It'll probably take me a little bit, maybe 15 minutes after the hour. So please, if you have things you need to go do, feel free to leave and I will send you the link to this recording. So mailers are exactly what they sound like. It's a postcard that's delivered to every house in a certain area, or if you've created that mailing list, you can use that to send mailers out to those customers. These are especially useful in advertising one-time events like a festival or the start of your CSA signups, but they can also be used for general marketing if you are a little creative about it. So including your farm location, your hours, where to purchase products. The mailer is less likely to end up in the recycling bin if you include information like a harvest calendar or a recipe or a map with locations where all your products are sold. Something that is going to keep that mailer with your contact information on it in front of potential customers longer. So just a few considerations. When planned efficiently, many folks do see a return on investment with this marketing tool. However, immediate cost can be a barrier. So one example of cost we've seen for an 8.5 by 5.5 inch postcard was around $1,200 to reach almost 4,500 doors. And so I just want to note that this included the cost of print, mailing, and postage, but did not include the cost of the design. So design costs do vary by complexity, but are usually around $80 to $100. But if you or someone in your family are interested in design, this can be one great way to cut down on costs is by designing it yourself. So some user-friendly platforms that you could use to design it would be Canva, which is an online website, MS Publisher, or Adobe InDesign. And when launching a mailer campaign, again, it's going to be most important to know your audience. You might consider the geographic reach, the average household income, or the average age of homeowners. So this is all information that the service provider can help you identify. But again, it's helpful to have an idea of who your current customers are when deciding where to advertise. And again, or you could just send these mailers out to a mailing list that you've already compiled. Right? And who doesn't love free things? So when the goal is to make a sale, though, it can seem counterintuitive to use freebies as a marketing technique, but there are a few ways that this can be an effective tool. So depending on what your promotion is, there are a couple different things you could get out of this marketing tool. Again, knowing your goal and knowing your customer base is crucial to using this marketing tool successfully. So here are a few examples to help illustrate this point. So let's say you have a consistent location where you sell from and you're looking to increase or broaden your customer base. In this case, you might give a discount for someone's first purchase with you, or you might run a holiday discount. And it doesn't have to be a major holiday. It could be a St. Patrick's Day or a daylight savings, because we love celebrating that. The amount of this discount depends on your pricing structure and business plan, but around 10% is pretty common for this. So using this discount helps incentivize new customers to make the stop, and it also encourages existing customers to continue making those purchases. But let's say you have a consistent customer base and you just want to increase the amount each customer spends at your location. In this case, you might give out grocery bags for every purchase that's over X amount. So ideally, these bags will be emblazoned with your farm name, your logo, and website. But these bags can be as little as 50 cents each and are something practical that customers can use often, that's going to keep your farm in the front of their mind. And as they use it around town, other folks are going to see it and you're going to get a little marketing boost from that as well. And of course, it doesn't have to be bags. There are lots of examples, notepads or pens, but just make sure you think about adjusting the minimum purchase price that the customer needs to buy as needed. So another way to utilize freebies is to strengthen your social media presence by incentivizing followers and shares. So you might run a time-limited campaign where if someone follows your page or shares a post and then shows you at a market or at a farm stand, they get a 10% discount. Or you might run a raffle through your Facebook page where everyone who comments or shares a certain post is entered into a raffle for a gift card or other promotional item. Just to note, we will be talking about gift cards at next week's workshop, but spoiler alert, when customers use gift cards, they are likely to spend more than the amount on the gift card. So both these strategies require customers to visit your location to redeem their prize. So in addition to spreading the word about your farm, you are also going to be creating sales as folks come to your location. And so remember, knowing your target audience will help you determine which strategy to use and whether it will be worth the cost of the promotional item or the discount you are giving. So for the example of the bag printed with the logo, and say this costs you $1 for every purchase of $20 or more. Customers had to purchase $20 or more worth of product to get this $1 bag. Let's say individuals prior to this promotion usually only purchased about $12 worth of product. So in this example, for each purchase of $20, you are making an extra $8 of extra profit for every $1 you spend. So essentially that's about $7 going in your pocket there. So this is one way you can adjust if you're giving out a more expensive freebie or a cheaper freebie. Maybe you only want folks to pay $15 or $10. It really is adjustable. And then another way to track your return on investment with this tool, just simply asking customers, what brought you here today? And keeping track of the purchases by those brought to your stall by this campaign, whether it was through social media or however you promoted the discount or the freebie giveaway. It's also a good idea to keep track of the number of goodies you are passing out and the average amount spent by each customer before and after the promotion. So this will help you see if customers are spending more money or if you are gaining more customers who are spending maybe not as much. But again, depending on your goals, one of these might be more the group that you're interested in. So online directories, real quick, are a fairly simple way to market your farm. It's essentially an online phone book. Customers who are interested in local food can search for producers in the area. And depending on the directory, the information can be as simple as links to your webpage and social media. But some do contain profiles that include your story and the products you have available. And then some, like Local Harvest, have spaces for customers to leave reviews of your business. So there isn't currently much data showing the number of customers these directories drive to farms, but they only require a small amount of setup. They're going to be free, and then you will occasionally monthly want to check in and make sure you update any information that needs to be updated. Many months might not need this. So Local Harvest, if you are a SNAP Ed retailer, you will get put on the SNAP Ed retailer locator. And then the Agriculture Marketing Service Local Foods Directory also has a site. It is difficult to judge the effectiveness of this tool. Like the other tools we talk about, you could just ask customers what brought them to your farm, or you can post a sign at your location asking folks who use the directory to leave a review if that feature is offered. So for Local Harvest, again, it requires very little investment from you. So this might be one of those easy ones that you can just put on your marketing plan. Right, press releases are our next form of passive marketing. These are an official way to distribute information through channels such as news organizations and chambers of commerce. Generally, press releases are written to provide information about an event, a change, or an update. So you can really take advantage of this flexible medium to get information about your farm into the public. So at their most simple, you will want to include the who, what, where, and why of whatever you're talking about, and contact information for people to learn more. So email, phone, website, and social media sites. There are lots of templates and examples online if you are interested in some inspiration. But press releases can also be an avenue for you to practice telling your story. So is your farm celebrating an anniversary? Are you adding bees to your list of livestock? Are you planting a new variety of vegetable? Any of these can be tied into the story, the mission of your farm, and share with the public what products you have and how and why community members can be a part of your story. Because again, it's about making that connection with customers who value your products. So in general, press releases can be sent to news stations, chambers of commerce, and should be posted on a site on your webpage. It may take some time to develop media contacts. So if you are just cold calling folks on news websites and sending them your press release, you might also include a question, is there someone else I should be sending this press release to? Anyone else you can think of would be interested in this story. So if you want to evaluate the effectiveness of this approach, you can track where the information from your press release appears. So this might require a quick Google search or checking the websites of the news sites that you send it to. But if you notice that your press releases aren't getting picked up and you're spending a lot of time writing them, it might be time to decide if they are worth the effort or if you need to reevaluate who you are sending them to. But again, including them on your website or snippets of them on your social media will help you tell that story and give you materials to work from. So next, I'll talk briefly about on-farm signage. So depending on the location of your farm and whether you are selling products on your land, this might be something you choose to utilize. Just to note, depending on your county, the location of your desired signs, and the size of your desired signs, your proximity to major roads, whether the sign is permanent or temporary, there may be restrictions on where on your land you can place those signs. So I will be giving a few examples of how you can think about that on-farm signage, but you will want to check with your local municipality because many of them do require permits for signs larger than 6 feet or that are in close proximity to major roadways. And so it's best to check with them because they have their clear definitions of major roadways as well. So as you start thinking about incorporating on-farm signage, again, think about the main purpose. What will you be advertising? Are you hoping to expand name recognition so customers will purchase from you at a farmer's market? Are you hoping that people will actually stop at your farm stand? Are you advertising for a special event? Or are these signs deeper into your farm providing educational information for folks who are at your farm? The answers to these questions will help you determine what your farm signage looks like. So for example, if you are hoping to bring more customers to your farm stand, depending on the speed limit of the road that goes past your farm stand, you will want to start advertising fairly far in advance so customers feel like they are safely able to stop. I know it's always so disappointing if you're driving fast down a road and you quickly see a sign for something really interesting and there's someone behind you, you don't have time to stop. So making sure you give folks enough warning. So just the general rule is the faster cars go, the more warning you need to give them. Some other signs that may be helpful are signs denoting if you accept credit or debit or PayPal, or if you are a cash-only operation. The size of the sign will also matter. Make sure the font in the sign is large enough for people to read and read easily. So this also means maintenance of your signs. So as we've been mentioning, a large part of marketing is projecting your story and projecting a welcoming image. So when your only contact with a potential customer is a sign, it's important that the sign looks well maintained and clear. It'd be very disappointing if the sign is a little run down and then your customers think, oh, it's from several years ago, it's not open anymore, it's not applicable. So making sure that we keep them updated. But one benefit of on-farm signage is they can be really affordable. So whether you get something custom designed for a more permanent sign or paint a piece of plywood for a quicker solution, there are options for every budget. And this flexibility will also help you evaluate if it's accomplishing its goals. So one quick way to look at effectiveness is to compare the number of customers at your farm stand before and after the signage was placed, if that's your goal, is quick numbers. You could also just ask your customers where they heard about your farm, or if they've been there before, or what caused them to stop. A lot of customers are willing to share that information. So similarly, we have our billboards. Billboards, though, are a little bit bigger. They should be very visual, especially in farming, which is so visually appealing. You might decide that sharing your story or your message or your product through photos is most effective, and a billboard can help you display that. So this is something you could design either yourself or working with a consultant or billboard company to create. So just a few considerations. As with on-farm signage, we want it big enough that folks can easily read as they are driving past. They don't have to slow down or worry about getting in an accident to gain all that information. You also want to strategically pick the location of the billboard, whether you are trying to grow awareness of your farm in a larger geographic region, or if you're hoping to get people who are in the area to make a stop by your farm stand. So again, thinking of those goals, what do you want out of spending this money on the billboard? And so the cost really does vary based on location and size, but I found them for about $362 to $5,000 a month. We briefly mentioned coupons before in our discussions of freebies, but I wanted to bring up a few additional considerations. So these can be created to share those discounts, but you could also give out coupons for a specific product. So for example, at the end of the season, you might pass out coupons for 10 ears of corn for $5. You might think about choosing a product that you have difficulty moving or something that you can sell as a bunch. So not necessarily underpricing what you're giving out the coupon for, but potentially bundling it or showing folks that it's something you still have. Or you could give out a coupon that's spend $5, get a winter squash, something that will help you move some of those products that you might end up having a lot of at the end of the season. And then just finding out what works for your business. One other option that you could do is using a punch card where a customer, every time a customer purchases from you, you punch their card. And then once you shop 5, 8, 10 times, they get a discount or a freebie. So then you know you're having more folks coming back to your stand and you're building that customer loyalty. But just note, be careful with coupons and discounts, and be aware of what your pricing needs to be so you don't undercut yourself and lose money. So it's also a best practice to limit the time the coupon or the discount is active. So limiting it to a month, a few days, or even a few hours. So for example, if you sell at a farmer's market, you may offer discounts during the time when your stall is less busy. So maybe early bird pricing from 7 a.m. to 10. This will encourage shoppers to purchase earlier in the day and get folks to your stall at a time that maybe would be a little bit slower. So when I think of sponsorship, I usually think of those racing cars that are plastered with brand names and they have the huge signs around the edge of the ballpark. But it's not just limited to those displays. The benefits of sponsorship are increasing the exposure of your logo, your product, and your farm name. And it gives you the opportunity to speak to additional customers if you are on site. And so some of the ideas that we have as avenues available for sponsorship are going to be schools, community sports teams, if you have businesses that have business dinners, but it's really going to vary based on your community. So make sure that this is, again, keeping up those community partnerships and building those relationships. So depending on what event or cause you're interested in sponsoring, there could be different opportunities beyond that financial sponsorship that we usually think of, you giving some money for your logo to be exposed. So being creative. If there's a dinner, you might think of donating a specific product that could be used in the dinner or contributing goods to a silent auction fundraiser. So donating food items for a dinner would be maybe helpful if you do produce or meat. If you do value added, thinking of donating things to a silent auction might be more feasible. So you could also provide time to guest speak at a fair, at an animal auction, a school assembly, a classroom, or if you have a lot of space, you could provide that space as a venue for whatever community event is happening. So as you look for potential partnerships, keep in mind your audience. Is this going to strengthen your connection with your existing customer base? Will you be reaching a demographic that is likely to become customers? So one example of this is speaking at schools. So the vast majority of children are not driving their family's purchases, but if you can send a flyer home advertising an event or supplying a discount, you could reach their parents. And even if the kid comes home and, oh man, I met this farmer at school today. They told me about this. They told me they have this at their farm. I want to go see it. That can be a great way as well. But again, deciding if it's going to help you reach your goals. Geographic location is also important to consider. So if your farm's in Jefferson County, it might not make sense to speak at the far border of St. Lawrence County. You probably won't have a lot of folks who are making that long drive. Of course, there are some exceptions, such as if you are advertising a specific event or festival. So when evaluating whether the effort of sponsorship will be worth it, again, think of your marketing goals and what customer base you are trying to reach. So you might think about, you might try to find out how many people will be in attendance or exposed to the materials created, whether that's flyers or brochures or pamphlets. You might ask, what are the opportunities for you to showcase your farm? If it's a dinner, is your contribution going to be labeled? Will you get to share your story? Will your logo or farm name be listed on flyers, brochures, or programs? Will you be able to be on site talking with community partners? Is that something you are willing and have time and energy and patience to do? Considering the energy that it will require of you is really a key consideration when deciding whether a sponsorship is a viable avenue to advertise your farm. So just keep in mind, if you don't have the energy for it, there's no harm in saying no, no shame. And then just briefly, the media mentions that's on there. So if it's a well-publicized event, is your farm going to be talked about in their press release, in their news interviews, things like that. So here is just an example. I guess I skipped the slide, but some of the questions that you might think about. Okay, the last tool, so we're finally here. The last tool I am going to talk about briefly is radio. So radio ads, I didn't specifically talk about TV ads today. Similar to radio ads, you have to think about that high production costs for whether it's an advertisement or an interview. But if you give a radio interview or a TV interview, there may be no production costs. So you won't have to pay for that, but overall it may be more expensive. So we're closing on this. This is going to be one of the more expensive marketing tools. As you can see, it's about $200 to $1,500 for a 30-second spot. And that 30-second spot, it depends on the program, but it will usually be run once every day during the week and twice each weekday. But again, it might be a good fit for one-time events or a specific event that is a good fit for a broad audience. So one example of this, if you are advertising a very specialty, a really niche product, radio is probably not a good fit because you're not going to be reaching enough people who are interested in that. So the example they always give is vegan products. So don't advertise vegan products on the radio because only 7% of adults are going to be vegan. So you're not going to be reaching the audience you want to. But an example of when it might work is if your primary customers are restaurants, this might not be a good fit because the chances are that someone who makes the purchases is listening to the radio at the time of your ad is fairly low. However, if you are having an event or advertising a new location or advertising a specific product is not the best fit, but it could work if it applies to a lot of people. A lot of people who are listening to the ad who chance to hear it would be interested in whatever you're selling. So it could be a useful marketing tools for you. It really does depend on the cost and the production value, whether or not it's worth it. And again, this cost is so difficult to predict because it's based on the number of listeners averaged at that time of day. And I had to really look into this because that confused the heck out of me. But again, usually it's about $200 to $1,500 per week. And production costs, if you factor it in, if it's an ad and not an interview, it could be an additional few $100s. So some additional considerations when you are considering whether radio is the right tool for you. Is there a specific radio show whose audience is the same as you hope to target with your ad? That could be a good time to run your ad. Is your ad running during a time when people might be distracted while listening to the radio? So commuter time when folks are heading home, trying to process the day, or even early morning when folks are just trying to wake up. Hopefully not driving, but potentially. And then think about, what does your radio ad need to share to resonate with your audience? How are you going to convey your message in 30 seconds that is going to get someone to react to it? So radio can definitely be very challenging. If you do have questions about it, please feel free to reach out and I can help you get some more information. And there we go. So that was our last tool we're talking about. I'll leave some time for questions at the end, but I just want to say thank you all for joining with me and sticking with me as I went a little bit over our planned time. Here is my contact information. Please feel free to reach out to me at any time. We are in and out of the office, so if I don't call you back right away, I do apologize. Give me a week or so and I'll try to get back. Email will be a lot quicker. And then I just want to mention real quickly 2 events we do have coming up. So this is from the CCE Jefferson website. If you look on the agriculture events page, we do have a lot of different events coming up. Our 2 ones that are fairly soon is next Thursday. I am running a workshop on exploring alternative payment methods. I'm going to try to do it in an hour. It might go into an hour and a half, but again, it will be recorded. And then we're having a calving 101, starting them right on March 24th there, led by our dairy specialist and livestock specialist, Gabby. And there are a lot more that I wasn't able to fit on the slide if you're interested. All right. I am now happy to take questions. I know I threw a lot of options out there and a lot of things to think about, so feel free to ask them now, or if in the future something comes up, again, please feel free to reach out.